It means the one who is strong. Bala means strength. The one who is a holder and having this strength is Balavan. In the same way, Sanskrit is a beautiful language if you try and understand that, right? In the same way, Bhagavana means the one who has Bhaga. What are the Bhaga? In English, when we translate that, it comes to 6 different opulences. Those opulences, one who has that in the most quantity, in the fullest quantity, 100% of whatever maximum can be achieved, is Bhagavan, and there is nobody who can be equal to him or greater than him. Because then you are not the supreme, right? When we saying absolute, that supreme, even if I'm saying I own $1,000 and somebody else comes up and says I have more than that, then you clearly surpassed me. But if I say I have 1,000 and somebody else also comes up and says I also have 1,000, then we are equal. I'm not the supreme in the context of wealth. So when these 6 opulences or 6 bhagas is being described in the scriptures, one of them is the fact that he is the proprietor, the owner of everything, because everything emanates from him. It belongs to him. That is why when everything belongs to him, can there be anybody who can surpass him in terms of wealth? No matter what we see around us, it all belongs to him. So in that way, he is the most opulent. So like that, there are 5 other opulences. The highest of that is what Krishna reveals. That is why I am Bhagavana. That is why he very clearly proclaims that in the Bhagavad Gita itself. So now from verse 21 onwards, what we are going to be reading, we're going to read a couple of verses. And if you're able to help me out in reading, I would really appreciate that. But otherwise, I'll read it out and I can do the summarization. What Krishna now is saying that, yes, I've told you I'm the seed-giving father. I've told you everything exists and emanates from me. But for those who don't fully understand me right now, because Krishna said that, right? That nobody fully understands me. He gives us ways in which we are able to connect with that concept of him being the supreme and be able to understand his opulence in the fullest sense, so that we can come to the fact of realizing who he is, right? Let's first understand an analogy, because this is a little lower knowledge in the perspective, right? If there is a friend of mine and I want to tell you all about that friend, and I'm saying the friend's name is XYZ, you don't know him or her, right? So even if I keep telling about that person, this is my friend, you don't know him? No. But if I now start talking about the qualities of that person, you'll start being able to start creating a picture in your mind. Oh, he's such a strong person. Oh, he has such sweet voice, etc., etc. I can keep giving out qualities. Now that qualities helps you start imagining the person. And through that means you can now start, in one sense, in your mind, create a picture and meditate on this person. Try and create in your mind a little relationship with this person. Pick up any famous personality. If you are interested in sports, a sports person. If you are interested in music, a musician, or somebody else that you follow in a particular sense. You've never met that person, but still you know and you feel a connection with that person. Don't we? That is because we have understood the person's personality. So when it comes to understanding Krishna, the reason why understanding Krishna is impossible through the normal means is that Krishna is the absolute person. We have not met the person. The only way we are able to connect to that person is through looking at the scriptures that reveal that information to us, and through that we are able to start understanding. When we get this knowledge through authorized sources, then we are able to come to a point of being able to start understanding who Krishna is, and then we build that relationship with him. And ultimately we do reach and qualify ourselves to come to a point of becoming face to face with him. Just like a fan of some celebrity, right? You keep following the celebrity around, and you will come into the notice, and the celebrity will finally, I got to meet this person. such a great fan of mine, right? And that kind of reminds me, I don't know the name of the person, maybe somebody knows. There's this one person who used to be a huge fan of Sachin Tendulkar, the cricketer. And then I think this is long back when he used to be famous. This fan of him would go everywhere around the world where the match was and Sachin Tendulkar used to play. He started sponsoring his tickets. He came in notice of Sachin. And that is how, he caught attention of that. That's the method by which we build relationship with Krishna also. That's why we read. That's why we discuss. That is how we build relationship with him. We try and understand his personality. And that is how we connect with the person. And that is how we said, oh, this person is really into me. I need to talk to this person. I need to build a relationship with this person. That is what attracts Krishna. So that's the highest form of things. But when we are not able to do that, what he's doing in these verses starting 21st is he's giving us a comparison for us to be able to understand. When I say, oh, you run very fast. But what does that fast mean? We start adding things. Oh, as fast as a horse or something. To give a comparison to something that we are familiar with. Something that we are aware of, we create a little comparison to that. They said, you see this person? Yeah, my friend is taller than him. Now you have a little reference to start being able to visualize, picturize things. Not the best way to know, but still, at least it helps us to get closer to the understanding of where we need to be. So that is what Krishna is very mercifully giving us. Is if you don't understand me fully right now, it's fine. But I'm going to give you reasons by which you can meditate on me, look around things, and based on that you will always be able to connect with the thought of me. What he's saying is that no matter which category you pick up, okay, under different categories, and we're going to read about them, no matter which category you pick up, and in that category you pick up the best, that best is what represents. That's what he's saying. So let's read a few verses. Does anybody want to volunteer for reading a few verses? I can read all, no worries, but then it becomes a monologue. I don't want people to speak. You want to read a few? Okay. So I'm reading from 21st verse first. He says, of the Adityas I am Vishnu, O light. Of lights I am radiant sun. Of the Marutis I am Marichi, and among the stars I am the moon. Next verse he says, of the Vedas I am the Samaveda. Of the demigods I am Indra, the king of heavens. Of the senses I am the mind. And in the living beings I am the living force, consciousness. Right? So again, for those who are picking up the book now, it's chapter 10, words 21 and 22 is that we read. So if you want to find out, on top, there's always the number of the verse. So if you keep flipping, it acts like a page number for you. So if let's take these examples, right? A few. So he's saying in different categories, right? Out of all the sources of light, we know as sun being the most radiant. Yeah, sure. There are other sources like this light or other light, but they are nothing in comparison to the radiance that comes out of the sun. So when in that way he's trying to help us understand. If you want to understand the radiance that comes from me, look at sun. Which even Srimad Bhagavatam does explain that sun is nothing but a reflection of the radiance of Krishna. And it is in a different context, it says it is his eyes. Right? So in the same ways it continues that of all the demigods, the Devi Devatas, I am Indra. Indra is the king of all the demigods, of all the Devi Devatas. Right? He is the king of the heavenly planets, and all the demigods kind of report to him in a sense. So in all of them, he is the highest, again, representing the fact that I am the highest authority. And out of the senses that we have, the different senses, I am the mind. Very important and helpful to understand is because mind is the one which controls the senses actually. At this moment of time, our mind is the one which is directing where do I see versus what do I listen to. That control exists with the mind. It's the highest among the senses. In this way, I can keep reading on if you want. So, of the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Of the Yakshas and the Rakshasas, I am the Lord of Wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni, and of the mountains I am Meru. And Meru is the mountain which is talked about as the Vedic in the Vedic cosmology, which is obviously much more detailed and accurate than what the cosmology is described today by the modern scientists. It talks of Mount Meru or the Meru Parvata as being at the center of the cosmic manifestation, around which everything else is there. In the same way, it says of the priests, O Arjuna, know me to be the chief, Brahaspati. Of generals, I am Kartikeya. Does anybody know who's Kartikeya? The son of Lachi. Right? So he's the greatest of the generals when it comes to the war fighting skills. And of the bodies of water, I am the ocean being the biggest of the water. So in this ways, the verses kind of continues. What we need to understand from this very beautiful set of verses is the fact that Krishna is the source and the highest and the best of all. So when we look at anything around us, what we are supposed to be understanding and realizing is, oh, I look at such a beautiful something. I see something which is is catching my attention because of its greatness in any perspective. That can be used by us to be able to remember Krishna. So that greatness that I'm seeing and I'm liking is what Krishna is. That's one way of knowing Krishna. So there are different stages in which we can understand the supreme truth or the absolute in that perspective, right? And in those different ways, we can very easily, slowly and steadily level up ourselves and scale ourselves, right? The first, for example, the starting point would be where we just understand the lowest form is where we are at a point where we don't even acknowledge the existence of God. Okay? We are an atheist in the perspective. That is the lowest form, that we are not even acknowledging that God exists and there is a creator and something. But there can be arguments and logical information given in order for us to come to a conclusion that yes, there is a supreme power that exists. Now that we understand there is a supreme orchestrator of the universe as a whole, we can understand that supreme as being that supreme some energy. At the very lower form of that knowledge, when we come, we can see the supreme as being some formless light somewhere. Again, that is a conception that a lot of people go with, but that's a lower form of the knowledge. Because now what we are understanding is we are acknowledging the existence of the energy that drives the universe, or creates the universe, or maintains the universe, but we don't understand the energetic person behind the energy. Energy just does not come by itself. There has to be somebody energetic with the energy. So that's this next level of knowledge, elevation that happens. From there we come to the point of existing and understanding, oh yeah, there's a person. I understand. There's a person, there's a Bhagavan that exists as being the person who's controlling. And then the final stage of everything comes to the point of where we are saying, now I understand this person and I'm building a relationship with that person in order to have a loving relationship with him. You can take a copy of Bhagavad Gita if you feel like to join us. We're just reading from the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. If you can please help them with the page number, I have a different version. So in this way, we can very clearly understand that the Supreme Person exists. Now, if we go by the very standards of what our modern day society has become, unfortunately, who is this Supreme Person whom is being reflected over here becomes a point of contention in the perspective of, oh, I think he's supreme and I think that person is supreme. But when we started, we defined who can be called as a supreme. We defined that the supreme is the one who is the best, that there is nobody equal or above them in terms of the quantification of different opulences that we are talking about. The most beautiful, the most renounced, the most strong, the most wealthy, like these different 6 qualities. So the first principle we need to understand is the fact that the supreme can only be one. So if you are here and I'm saying Krishna is supreme and you go somewhere else and somebody else is calling somebody else supreme, somebody has to be wrong then, right? If I'm saying the definition that the supreme creator has to be one, and I'm calling the supreme as being Krishna, and somebody else calls somebody else as supreme, right? Then somebody has to be wrong. Let's take a step back and see in our own context. I am an individual person, much smaller, much tinier in terms of potencies as the Supreme Lord Himself. But I, as an individual, am being addressed by different names by different people. I have a very different sort of relationship with different people that are around me. My daughter has a very different relationship with me as compared to my wife, as compared to my mother. And my office colleagues see me in a very different form. Right now you see me in this kurta and dhoti, when you come to my office you see me in a suit, being addressed with a very different name as how I'm addressed over here, and so on and so forth. So who is wrong if, say, my office colleague and my daughter start describing what I am as a person? Do you think the description is going to be similar? No. Who is right, who is wrong? I am the same person that the two people are describing. It depends on the relationship that we have had. It depends also on the source through which we heard about me. You heard about me from my friends. They'll tell you all sorts of nasty things about me that I've done. Versus if you talk about somebody in my team whom I manage, they'll call me as a nasty boss. Or so on and so forth. Depending on what is the relationship, they describe them in different ways. When we try and limit the Supreme Person to a definition, and a definition in terms of this is how I see and this is what the Lord is, then we don't understand the supremacy of the Lord. Through the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, we understand, or we love calling that Supreme Person as Krishna. Why? Why not any other name? We do call him by many other names. There are more than 1,000 names. Even in the Bhagavad Gita itself, there are more than 100 names by which Krishna as a person is called because of his qualities. He's called Giridhari, the one who lifted the Govardhan mountain. And so on and so forth. He's called by so many different names. But Krishna is the name which is very, very dear to everybody who understands him completely, is because Krishna means all attractive. That's the meaning of the name. And one who understands the Supreme Person as a person and interacts with him in a loving manner, understands the supremacy of that person and sees how that person is the well-wisher of everybody, will find that person as attractive. And as we said, we were talking just a minute ago, the level of knowledge that we might have developed, the level of understanding that we might have developed about this Supreme Person will be different. It will not be wrong, but it will be different. And when we read the Vedic scriptures, we are able to acknowledge those varieties, and we can understand that, oh, you're a first grader, you're a kindergarten student, you're a grade 9 student, or you're an engineer, for example. Let's talk in an analogy format, and then we'll come to the actual fact. In an analogy perspective, if I tell my daughter who is 8 years old to draw the solar system, she's going to draw a circle for a sun, and then the first circle, and the second circle for each of the planets' orbits. And from her perspective, it's correct. And you grow up a little more, and you gain a lot more knowledge. You say, oh no, the path, the orbit is not circle, but it's elliptical. Okay, when you read more, you'll try and understand that, oh, it's not just elliptical, it actually goes in a spiral, because planets are rotating and revolving continuously. So as your knowledge evolves, your understanding deepens further. Not that my daughter who drew it as circles was wrong, it was just her level of conception of what the solar system is. In the same way, when we look at the understanding about the Supreme Person, that knowledge level varies. For some, as we were saying, it's called the level of understanding as Brahman. which basically just means is that I understand and acknowledge there being a supreme energy which orchestrates and controls. That's the first entry level. Now, at that moment of time, we don't realize and understand that that's a person, an energetic person behind that energy who is orchestrating and putting in energies into a certain way, and the energy is following the direction of that energetic person. But is the understanding that there is an energy out there is not incorrect. The beauty about the Vedic science as a whole is the fact that it encapsulates the complete knowledge, and then you don't find contradiction, you just see, different levels and different perspectives of from where you are seeing things. But then when it encapsulates everything, you're able to understand the highest point, the pinnacle of the knowledge itself. Right? So you've understood that. The analogy of that is given from the perspective that somebody understands the sun's rays, but does not understand sun as sun. Right? I understand that there is rays that exists, but I don't acknowledge that there is sun that exists. Right? For me, I've not looked up and I've seen sun, that circular thing in the sky. I've not seen that. I've just seen the sun rays, and from that I acknowledge that sun exists. The person is not wrong, but the person has a little lesser perspective and lesser knowledge. Right? So for that reason, these verses that we were reading, Krishna is so merciful in saying, I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm giving you the understanding about my opulence. I'm telling you about completely about me, because that's what he says in Bhagavad Gita. Once you have what I'm telling you now, there is nothing more left to be known. That's what he says. This is the complete knowledge I'm giving you out. But he also helps us understand in different ways that there are different forms, not in the direct sense of a form, but there are different levels of the knowledge that can still exist, but you have to elevate yourself and come to this highest standard of knowledge over the period of time. So that's the beauty overall. And let's look at a few verses. Let's look at the next verse of how he's comparing things, right? I'm going to, yeah. So I'm at verse 26. It says, of all the trees, I'm a banyan tree, and of the sages among the demigods, I am Narada. Of the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha, and among perfected beings, I am sage Kapila. So again, for every category that we see out there, among the trees, the banyan tree is an amazing tree because it has so much of capability to provide so much. The leaves are helpful, the branches are helpful, and there's so much that you can create out of that one banyan tree itself. When we start looking into how in the Vedic culture you can create a hut out of a banyan tree branches. In that way, and again, like amongst the sages, you can see like it compared as Narada. For those who know who's Narada Muni, he's an amazing devotee of the Lord. Not just the fact that you can be learned and be good, but the greatest is the one who's learned and who can teach, and teach it in a merciful way that no matter what your level is, based on that you can get acknowledged. So let's look at the amazing text called Srimad Bhagavatam. So Narada Muni, as a sage, there are multiple places where he's spoken. There are multiple different type of people that he have talked to in order to give them knowledge. So for those who are aware of Krishna Leela, for example, Nanda Kuvera, and two of these personalities who were engaged in shameless activities, let's put it that way. In order to teach them, he punished them. But then there is another personality, there's a different place, where he's having a much more intellectual conversation. Same person interacting with different peoples in different ways. Then there's another king to which he's doing the conversation, but now he's narrating him a story in order to try and explain the difference between who you are versus your body. So that is the beauty of a sage. That is why he is being called the highest, because he's able to give this knowledge and understanding and convince people of different levels about what is the final conclusion. So the verses in this context also becomes important is because what Krishna is also trying to say here is that under all the categories I'm the best, I'm the supreme, and you have to understand my supremacy, and then you have to kind of have a relationship with me in that perspective. But there's one more very interesting verse which comes in from a very different scripture, Shri Ishupanita, which talks about the supremacy of the Lord and the fact that we all individuals are emanating from Him. Right? The misconception that he breaks over there that can come into one's mind is when we take something and we take out something of it, the original thing gets reduced in quantity. If I have 6 Bhagavad Gitas over here, people came and picked up one of the copies, the number of copies here is reducing. But when we talk about the Supreme Person and we are saying that the living entities are emanating out of Him, His supremacy, His opulence is even after so many living entities emanating out of Him, He does not reduce in quantity. Mathematically, the way it is explained a little bit, because we sometimes these information are inconceivable to us, we kind of go with an analogy which to some extent gives us a comparison of the knowledge that we are trying to talk about. I say 10 minus 1 becomes 9, but infinity minus 1 is? Anybody with the math skill? Infinity minus 1 would be infinity. Because when you're saying it's infinite, which means it's unlimited, no matter how much you take out of it, it will still remain infinite. That's a little math that I learned when I was a kid. So that is what helps us to understand that even the today's mathematics concept is able to explain us the concept that there can be something supreme, no matter how much comes out of it, it becomes complete. And also that same verse, it goes by Om Purnamadam, Om Purnamadam. It says basically that every entity that is coming out of Him is also supreme in its own sense, complete in its own sense. We all as an individual are complete personalities in ourselves. But we are not equal to the supreme whole. We are minute in quantity, but from a quality perspective we are the same. Let's talk of this as an example, and this is the knowledge that we are trying to derive from here. When we talk about the Supreme Lord, Supreme Person, He is a supreme controller. When we talk ourselves as a tiny living entity emanating from that supreme controller, what does that make us in terms of being a controller? We become tiny controllers. So right now, are you able to control where you're keeping your phones? You are. You can decide to keep it on your right, keep it on your left, keep it in your pocket, wherever. You are a controller. But can you control the movement of suns, planets? No. But the Supreme Person can. So there's a level of difference in that perspective. So yes, we are controllers. Ishvara is the term that is used in Sanskrit. We are controllers, but we are not the Supreme Controller. But there are certain qualities that we inherit in that perspective from the Supreme Lord. And that is what we are supposed to be aware of as being the essence and the crux of the Bhagavad Gita as a knowledge. That is the fact that first, the Supreme Lord is eternal. And so are we also. But we die. We can understand the concept, okay, the Lord being eternal because He does not die and etc., etc. But what about us? Our original identity is that of being a living entity, a soul, which is different from that of the body. The soul is eternal in its quality. Our identity is that of a soul, not the body. How do we prove that? Does anybody know? How can we prove the fact that you are a soul and not a body? I mean, listening to a book, audio book, and very beautiful, all these small books that exist. But can anybody first, let me ask this as a question. Have you heard this as a concept before, the difference between a body and a soul? That you are a soul and not a body? Can anybody prove it for me? Anybody? How many of you have seen your picture as a child? You have? You have? Did you look the same as you look today? But that photograph is yours, right? What? The body has changed completely. When you're saying that, oh, this photograph is mine, but you don't look exactly the same as you did, say, 15 years ago. So what you're showing is the body. The body has changed completely. But you still identify with that experiences, with that entire journey that you have had through with this body. You know that personality remains the same. So that is one way in which Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita also. He says that the way the soul is moving between boyhood to youth to old age, in the same way at the time of death, the soul will move into another body. Linear progression, and you can keep extrapolating data if somebody knows statistics. In these ways, Krishna just does not give the fact, he's giving it very scientifically, and that's why learning it from the Bhagavad Gita directly is very beautiful, right? So that's one quality. We are eternal, we will keep changing our bodies till when we don't come to a point of spiritual identification and realization, but we will keep changing our bodies, but we will remain the same eternal. And that explains why we don't like things like dying, because that's not our natural state. It's not natural for us to go through the process of death, which is the process of changing of a body. So the Supreme is eternal, and so are we also eternal. Then there is interesting another point, by the way, that eternity is called Satta. And when I combine the three words, you might have heard those terminologies before. So the next part that we inherit from that Supreme, in that perspective, is called Chit, intelligence. Chit, C-I-T, you can say it in that perspective. Right? Chit is intelligence. The Supreme is intelligence, and so are we. We have a level of intelligence to rationalize things, to reason out things. When we are covered by a lot of other reasonings that we have, then our reasoning changes from coming to a point of saying, see, I can logically tell you that the Supreme exists, to using that same reasoning power to say, no, I'm not convinced, I don't agree to the existence of the Lord. The Lord lets us use our intelligence in the way that we want to, but the intelligence exists. So that's Sat, Chit. Can anybody guess what the third word is going to be? Sat, Chit, and anybody? No? The third is Ananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Sachitananda. As we call it. Ananda is being blissful. The Lord is blissful, and so are we in an original perspective blissful, in our original constitutional position, as it's called. Then why do we suffer? We suffer because we are starting to identify ourselves with the body. I am this body. I'm a male, you're a female, etc., etc. And then we start coming up with rules and categorizations and build on top of it. Oh, you're a Canadian, I'm an Indian, etc., etc. And start building rules around all of that. And that is what is confining us in our abilities and capabilities and leading to sufferings and sorrow. You've heard the term called self-realization? Oh, when I get self-realized, I'll be so happy. I'll feel liberated. Nirvana. All the amazing terminologies is being used with respect to self-realization. But what does self-realization really mean? It is realizing the fact that we are not this body, but an eternal soul, a part and parcel of the Lord. Once we understand that, that is when we come to the point of stopping to limit ourselves with the limitations of the body. I need glasses to see. But that's the limitation of the body, not me. If I get beyond the limitations of the body, then all these constraints will not exist. It's because I'm constrained, I'm identifying myself with the body. That is why all the problems associated with the body come to me. Would you like an analogy to see how that applies? Okay. Let's talk about two different scenarios. In the first scenario, you're in a taxi. Maybe you took an Uber. You're going down the Avenue Road and you meet with an accident. The front part of the car is destroyed. You're fine. You're able to walk out with no hurt, nothing. Will you be upset that the car got spoiled? Like it's broken? It's an Uber. It's not your car. You'll still be upset. For the person maybe, out of compassion. But the fact is that you don't have to pay out of your pocket. You will not be as concerned and worried about it as it was your own car, when the same incident happened with your own car. The reason of that difference is because we associate ourselves with the car. My car. I have to take care of it. It has to be in the best shape. Versus when we say, oh, this is just an Uber that I'm using to go from point A to point B, my attachment and affection to that car becomes much lesser. But still we use the car. Still we be responsible while sitting in the car. We still obey the rules of wearing a seat belt and etc. The same principle applies to us when we start understanding the difference of we being a soul versus we being a body. When we understand this body is just a temporary outer covering which is existing for now, and it does not equate to my own identity, then we are able to dissociate ourselves with the pains and suffering that the body brings. It will come. We will still try and do our best to try and be healthy and all of those things. But the way it creates suffering for us, that changes. Because now it's just an instrument that is meant to be used for a particular reason. And we just make sure that it is able to help us meet that purpose of that instrument. That's it. Yes. Very good question. Let's rewind back to the first chapter. And that is why the Bhagavad Gita speaks it, because it really reflects on how we think. Arjuna is representing exactly what our thought processes is. So when we are at the battlefield, when Arjuna was at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, for those who don't know, this is a battlefield between cousins. Arjuna, being from one of the party, he's trying to reason out by saying, I don't want to fight this war because I don't want to kill my own family members. I don't want to kill my own people. And he gives reason to that. One of the reasons is this compassion. This compassion is based on the fact that, oh, they are my relatives. I cannot kill my relatives. If I kill my relatives, who am I going to enjoy with? If I get all of this kingdom after winning the war, whom am I going to enjoy with? Oh, if I kill somebody, I will have sinful reactions. He gives multiple such reasonings. In the same way as we are talking about being compassionate for an Uber, he's thinking from that same perspective. Compassion is good. It's a good quality to have, but we need to be aware of what we need to be compassionate about and have to put the compassion in the right context. My shirt, my kurta over here or shirt that I wear is going to get worn down with time. If I keep attaching myself with it and be compassionate with, oh, my shirt, nothing should happen to it, that's not a very intelligent thing. I'm supposed to be wearing it. It is supposed to be going through different cycles of things with which it will weather over the period of time. So my attachment is not an intelligent. My compassion for a shirt is not intelligent. So what comes is now, which is a very interesting thing that you brought up, is this concept of principles. Being compassionate for others is a principle. But then principles are not flat. Principles have an hierarchy. Right? Is it good to shout at anybody? Have your parents shouted at you ever? Then are they being bad to you? Why? Because principles have an hierarchy. Over there, parenting was a higher principle. In the same way, freedom is a principle. It needs to be Everybody has the right to freedom to be able to move around. But there are certain citizens of the country who are in jail. Are we breaking the principle? No, because there is a higher principle on top that exists. So in the same way now, when we talk about being compassionate about others, that compassion needs to be correctly placed in the principles. The right compassion, and I'm going to go again to an analogy that really helps me put things into context. Let's look at this compassion. I'm walking down the road, I'm hearing cries for help. I see there's this deep well, and there's a person stuck in that well. I look down. Hey, what's up? Why are you crying? He said, I've been stuck here for 5 days without food, without water. It's dark, dingy here. It's so painful to be here. Oh, here, take some food, take some water, take a flashlight, and I move on. I address to the 3 things he said. I'm hungry, it's dark and dingy, I'm thirsty. I address them, I'm being compassionate to him, have I not? No. What was the true compassion? To get him out of there. To address the root cause of his suffering. So when we see somebody suffering around us because of hunger, because of diseases, because of multiple other reasons, an intelligent person would be able to place the compassion correctly by saying the reason of your suffering is actually the karmic reactions, you not having the knowledge of what the right path of you was supposed to be, because of which you are suffering. And while we are now doing it, we'll address the short term and the long term both. That is the right compassion. That you are hungry, like what we do is Sunday feast programs you might have seen, come down. There are a lot of homeless people that we say, Sundays you're free to come in. But what we are offering them is sanctified food. We're offering them the holy name of the Lord. We're offering them also, along with satisfying their hunger, we're also giving them something that will help them cut down that cycle of karmas because of which they were in that suffering position in the first place. In an analogy perspective, what people talk about, it's better to not feed a person but educate them so that they can feed themselves. We understand that principles. We understand that it is better to address the root cause of the problem than to just superficially show compassion. So that's the difference when we talk about. In the analogy we were talking, being compassionate with the Uber which got into an accident is a very superficial compassion. Compassion has to be correctly placed for ourselves and for others. Right? We have like 12 minutes more to it, but I would want to open up for any questions, discussions, because this went well. But instead of going further and continuing to discuss, but any questions on this concept that we just talked about, or there's something that you would want me to elaborate on? This whole principle, we have to understand it for ourselves also. The reason why I talked about the principle of we having a constitutional position as being Sat, Chit, Anand, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, is meant to ask ourselves the question, then why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? The problem in today's day, it's kind of been a problem for a while, but today it's become even more, is we have normalized pain. We have normalized suffering. Right? Just in your head, in your mind, just try and imagine yourself going to somebody and telling them, I am suffering a lot. My heart's hurting. There's something going wrong deep within me. Do you think the person is going to entertain you for a long time? They might just superficially show compassion for a minute. And I'm not saying it's a general principle, but most of the people will fall under the category of, okay, it happens with everybody. Go on, live on, man, stop crying. That is the kind of response. We might see a person trying to show compassion for a few minutes, but then it does not last long. It ultimately comes down to the point is, because we have created this aspect of, hey, hi, how are you? The answer needs to be, I'm good, how are you? Have you ever tried answering somebody who says, hi, how are you? I'm suffering, man. You think the person is going to stop and talk to you? Is it what happened? No. We have created this notion around us, everything is fine, say everything is fine, believe that everything is fine, even if deep within we know not, it is not. The fact that we are having to lose our loved members, the fact that we have to go through these different cycles of sufferings in so many different ways, it's not natural. It does not feel like how things should be. But we are accepting it as we know. The intelligence we have been given, the chit that I said, Sat Chit Anand, the intelligence we have been given is to ask that as a question. No, this is not seemingly correct. What's going wrong here? And understanding the science behind it. So when in the chapter 10, Krishna is talking about his opulence, he's giving that opulence for us to be able to understand who he is, so that we understand our relationship with him, so that we can engage in that relationship and get out of that suffering. Our situation is like that of the son of a wealthy person. He's going around, he just rejected his father, who's a wealthy person. And he's going out suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering. Just because he rejected his father, he said, I don't want to hear anything from you. The only thing that he has to do to end his suffering is to just turn back and go back to his father. And the sufferings are ended. And that's the same case with us. Just turn back and look at the Supreme Lord and acknowledge his position and our position as being his loving child, and engage in that loving relationship. That's all we are supposed to do. And the process that is given in the Bhagavad Gita really helps us to come to that position. The starting is to start acting in accordance to his teaching. What is his teaching? Let's simple examples is just do things for me. How many are here as married couples? Who are married? You married? Anybody else? A very common thing that we might have seen, right, in marriages. I do so much for you, and what do you do in return for me? And then there's a fight. What do you mean I don't do anything for you? I cook from morning to evening for you. I said, I drive down to the grocery store and do so much, and then also you're not happy, and blah, 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 blah. Is going on. That's the cause of our suffering, because we are doing things for ourselves. I am giving you something so that I get something in return. In what is being trained, what we are being trained, we are in training right now, but Srila Prabhupada is, in Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder, Acharya of ISKCON, he's training us, is just change a very small thing. I'm working for the Supreme, you're working for the Supreme. Now, I'm not going to do a comparison. In our household life, as it's called Grahastha Ashram, that's one of the principles we are taught. Have Krishna in the center. You work for Krishna, I work for Krishna. Today my wife was working. She had to go for a doctor's appointment in the morning, but lunchtime I did the cooking. Okay? I'm on leave today because I had to take her. Now, I can say, oh, I did cooking for you today, you do the dishes. Let's balance it out. Equality. Right? But what's the fact? I did not do cooking for her or for me. I did cooking for Krishna, who's there right there. I offered it to him. So I did service for him. Now, whosoever gets a chance and a method, we are not counting now amongst ourselves, you did this, I did this. Because both of us, the objective is same now. The objective is to do service for Krishna at home. And that aligns everything. It aligns internally things for you. It aligns things with your spouse. It aligns things within the family. It aligns things within the society. The entire universe can be aligned in that respect. And to where I was saying is, when I'm saying Krishna, Krishna means the most attractive. You want to replace Krishna with some other ways to address that Supreme Personality? Feel free to do it and apply the same principle. It will result in the same way. how you are addressing and approaching that Supreme Person, it just shows the level of depth of understanding. And that level of depth of understanding only helps to make it more accurate for us to do things better. The more I know you, the better I can do things for your pleasure. Or the better I can follow what your teachings are. But if I just have read a small newspaper article about you, maybe I'm not going to do that good a job. Right? So again, a final call for any questions, comments, realizations. I'm also open for any challenges because that's the principle. In the Vedic sciences, when we say questions and even saying I'm not convinced is also a part of the Vedic learning process. This pariprashna sevaya, that questioning is very important. So does anybody have any questions for me or any challenges are also welcome? Anybody? Anybody? Right. I want to thank you all for being such nice, attentive listeners. We have copies of Bhagavad Gita out over there in the boutique, probably some in the Govindas also. If you do not have a copy of this, please take today as an opportunity to grab one. The books are not what we call as for sale because you will not see them in stores. The only reason we ask for some donation for the books is because the cost of printing and everything has to be covered. And yes, what donation you give is a little more than what the cost came in for. That helps us to run the temple also in a sense. But that's a very different topic. From your perspective, giving donations helps you to connect with the parampara. It's the dakshina that you give, a guru dakshina. It's a little offering to the teachings itself as your humble submission to saying, please give me the knowledge. It's a concept of giving your gratitude. So whatever you feel like giving as a donation, please feel free to talk at the reception. Get a copy of Bhagavad Gita today if you don't already have one. If you do already have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, my humble request would be to please make it a little small habit to read, even if it is a small words, a page, whatever, every day. And these Tuesday Sangas, every Tuesday 6:30 on rotation, we have different speakers who come in. Feel free to come and join us for the Tuesday programs and any other different programs that we have in different ISKCON centers. It just helps us to be with like-minded people to help us get an understanding of how these knowledges have to be practically implemented and get our questions answered if we have any. Right? So with that, I'm going to thank you all and hope you all have a very nice day and the light ahead. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.